Welcome to the OrthoClips Podcast Series, where we're going to discuss the latest hot topics and high-impact papers in orthopedic surgery. I'm your host, Saqib Rahman. Let's get this episode started. Welcome back to the OrthoClips Podcast Series. Today, we have a good one. We're interviewing a orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Manish Patel, and our podcast today is on Manish Patel, leading the shift in knee replacement surgery and soft tissue preservation. Dr. Patel is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon practicing in Franklin, Virginia, and he is the CEO of the Jiffy Knee. And we're going to hear all about that today. Dr. Patel and I actually spent a year together back in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
A long time ago, couple University Hospital. So some good memories of that. But so thanks, Manish, for coming on the program. Really appreciate you having here.
Yeah, Saqib, I'm honored to be on your podcast and YouTube channel. Really excited about that. And yeah, we're dating ourselves, but it was about 20 plus years now.
Yeah.
And it seems like, we still connect periodically, and I'm excited to be here and appreciate you having me on your show.
Great. Well, like I hinted, we're going to talk a little bit about Jiffy Knee. So I guess I want to hear a little bit like an origin story, perhaps, if there is one. Like, if you could start at the beginning, how did Jiffy Knee come about?
Sure.
Was there a particular patient or case or moment in your practice that you just felt like the traditional way of doing knee replacements wasn't serving patients as well? Or what's the story?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I actually started going back to residency, right? Going in residency, and even in my fellowship, we were doing a lot of knee replacements with very skilled surgeons, a lot of them fellowship trained. But the concept was a midline incision, and either a mid-vastus or a medial parapatellar standard arthrotomy. But in my fellowship, I got to see other approaches, and one of them was a sort of a medial oblique, but more of a subvastus concept. And when I would see those patients in recovery and in the clinic, I couldn't believe how well they were doing. And so I was sold that soft tissue preservation was one of the key things. And so when I started my practice in Franklin, Virginia, I started doing a medial oblique subvastus. I didn't believe that doing a midline incision was the way, because you actually got to dissect the skin off the VMO to go under it. And so I went through a medial oblique approach, and I was in a small rural town. And but I still didn't get the attention. My patients did fantastic. Outcomes were fantastic. So there was not really any particular patient, but I was like, I need to raise awareness, and I need to separate myself from everyone else and all the great centers of excellences where I was losing patients. And so I actually formed the brand Jiffy Knee. And it was all about soft tissue preservation. And it was a trademark to really differentiate myself. And so I started doing the Jiffy Knee program. And I started doing some, direct consumer marketing type with social media. And I couldn't believe how quickly I grew. I went from doing about 100 total knees a year. Now I'm doing about 1,200 total knees a year. And the biggest question was, is there a Jiffy Knee surgeon near me? And that's when we took the program and scaled it and started growing the program. Now we have over 75 surgeons in place. But yeah, it was a defining moment. When I created that, I was able to raise brand awareness of the unique approach.
So let me ask you, what outcomes have you definitely seen change with this approach?
Yeah,
and then I actually might, and then I'll follow up. Right, I'll follow up now, and you can answer in order, I guess. But is there anything you feel like maybe hasn't changed in terms of doing this compared to the traditional approach you were doing previously?
Sure. So the one big thing in terms of outcomes and what has changed my outcomes is early recovery. So some of the things that we tend to not focus on, but our questions will always ask is, how quickly can I drive? We have a lot of patients that are single, patients, or have a dependent spouse or significant other. And so they want to get active again. And so what are my restrictions? How quickly can I drive? How quickly will I be off of a cane or a walker? And pain. And those are the things that we're really pivoting on. And so just recently, about a month and a half ago, I went to a narcotic-free protocol. And so you wonder, like, how can you do a narcotic-free protocol in a total joint replacement? I started changing and focusing on a total knee replacement as a soft tissue procedure rather than a bony procedure. I actually got away from even doing adductor canal block. We went to a completely narcotic protocol, and about 85% of my patients are narcotic-free total knee replacements now. And in terms of driving, we're seeing our patients drive in approximately 7 to 10 days and off of assisted devices 7 to 10 days. So the concept was if we keep everything else the same, meaning the implants and keeping the surgeons implant agnostic and with the philosophies that they practice in balancing the soft tissues and the total knee. But if we can take someone who's doing a standard midline incision and cutting the VMO and changing that to a soft tissue preservation, and because remember, we're asking these patients to fire their quads, go up and down stairs, and get off of a commode and get out of bed by firing their quadriceps. But that's the same muscle we've cut to actually get the surgical exposure. So we can eliminate that portion of it. That was the most pivotal step in getting the outcomes that we did. The thing that we did not change and we don't want to change is the surgeon's autonomy on how they want to balance the knee, because there's also kinematic alignment, measured resection, gap balancing, robotics, uh, other enabling technologies, and cruciate retaining, CR. Those philosophies we don't want to change. So that has not changed with the Jiffy Knee program, but the soft tissue preservation was the key component that we did change. And that's what we're seeing with the outcomes now.
When you had surgeons, obviously it started with you, right? And how many surgeons are in the program now?
There are 75 surgeons as of this month in 2.5 years throughout the United States that are Jiffy Knee surgeons.
Okay, so really growing. So what are some of I always think of, as you know, I do orthopedic trauma where it's like every case is kind of different, but I always felt that one of the things about total joints is, you kind of get used to doing the same thing every time, and there's value in that and doing the same thing every time. So, definitely in total joints, it's one of these things where it's really hard to sort of get out of that same way every time because now you're doing something different.
Yeah.
So when you have a surgeon come to you, what do you find are some of the um, what are some of the reasons they're coming to Jiffy Knee? Because they've been doing it differently. And what are some of the challenges that you found new surgeons to adopt and doing this and changing their practice? So like a new surgeon who's
Yeah.
to the program.
Yeah. So one of the biggest reasons why a surgeon is coming is because I think it's, if you look at in terms of the outcomes and acute patient satisfaction scores on total knees versus total hips, there's a big disparity, especially since doing the direct anterior hip replacement. But we haven't moved that needle in terms of total knees. And so the reason why surgeons are coming seeking this out is because they're now starting to see how these Jiffy Knee patients are doing in terms of the outcomes early on and how we're able to pivot so quickly. And so I think they're looking for ways that they can improve their practice on that. Also, our patients are very tech savvy these days, and they're going to try to seek for different ways that could potentially help them out. And so social media has become a big point of information for them. And so they will start to look for differences of differentiating. And the surgeons do want to differentiate themselves from what they're doing. And so that's one of the biggest reasons. And the second reason is the secondary growth that we're experiencing with our surgeons. Our surgeons are growing in terms of surgical volume for elective practices from 200 to 600% within 18 to 24 months. So we're taking surgeons that are doing 150 total knees in the competitive market, and they're going to 600 to 800 total knees a year on the average. So that really has been a significant pivot for them to seek out something that could help their practice in a competitive market as well as the outcomes as well. So that's been really, really the big thing. In terms of surgeons, skepticism is always going to be there, right? Especially when a surgeon's been doing something for a long time and it works relatively well. Then when you present something new to them, there's going to be skepticisms. And the best is actually the surgeons are like, there's no way that you can achieve an arthrotomy in about 90 seconds with less soft tissue dissection and better surgical exposure than what I'm doing. And so that is going to be hard. But the best is when they come into the teaching program and they get to scrub in with me and they see like, wow, we can actually increase the efficiency, decrease soft tissue trauma, and decrease our exposure time and our closure time while maintaining the autonomy of practicing everything else they want to do that. And so that's been a challenge, but once they see more and more surgeons doing it, it's actually the best situation for them.
And getting back to the approach, and you talked about pain control also, and how you've been able to now go to a narcotic, or I guess opioid-free protocol. And I'd like to ask you about that too. So because of the soft tissue preservation, I guess it's more than just less pain. I guess you're having less functional deficit out the gates, right? I mean, like, I guess the quads are just not inhibited as much. I mean, I can tell you, I had an ACL surgery, and all they did was stick a beef pen through my quads, and like, it took a while to get those quads back in shape.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, I guess it's that immediate functional deficit that it's just you can't get those to function on top of, I guess, the pain.
Yeah, so I think the big thing is immediately post-operatively, you might have an adductor canal block, which would help you for a while, maybe 24 hours, give or take a little bit. But past that point, we're asking them to fire the same muscle we've cut and putting a bunch of stitches in there to repair it. And I think that's been the pivoting point, keeping everything else the same. And the best testimony, actually, Saka, are the surgeons that have done a traditional midline arthrotomy total knee replacement. They come to the teaching program, become a Jiffy Knee surgeon, and that same patient, same surgeon, same hands, 6 months later, now get the other side done. And even in their hands, has been a night and day, not changing anything else, including surgeons. And to be able to show that this has been one of the low-hanging fruit that we haven't focused on. And that's allowing them to recover a lot quicker. So we're allowing our patients to squat, we're allowing them to kneel. The incision is not midline, so there's no sensitivity on the anterior aspect of the knee. And we're actually seeing less soft tissue swelling as well because of the dissection, that minimal dissection we have to do.
Got it. So with the what is your current if you have a protocol, or I don't know how varied it is, but what's like your standard post-op pain medication protocol, which is
Yeah.
opioid free now?
Yeah. So one of the things that actually I like that we just recently started incorporating was Jernavix. It's a sodium channel blocker medication. And so we've really incorporated Jernavix into to substitute for the opioids. And that's been a game changer for us. Also, we're using oral TXA, dexamethasone if they don't have any type of issues with diabetes. Uh, we're also doing meloxicam if there's no kidney issues or if they're not on any high dose anticoagulants. And then baby aspirin as our DVT prophylaxis. But that's pretty much it. And Jernavix is the primary. And we do pre-dose them with 2 pills the morning of the surgery. And since it's non-sedative, it's worked well. And the only contraindication is you just don't take it with with grapefruit juice. But otherwise, we start that. And then we start outpatient physical therapy in about 99% of our patients within 48 hours after surgery as well. And our goal is to get them off of the assisted devices. Probably our goal is within the first 7 to 10 days. Some are a little earlier than that.
Yeah, Jernavix has been pretty good even for my practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's worked really well for our patients. And I think a lot more of the insurance companies are starting to take note of it and allowing for some coverage. But Vertex, which is the parent company, has got coupons online that the surgeons can give to their patients, which has been really nice as well.
Yes, we've used that too.
Yeah.
There's like a sample as well as the coupon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
My voice is not going to hold that much longer.
No worries.
Let's talk about the future.
Yeah.
Next 5 to 10 years, where do you think knee replacements are going?
Yeah. So there's several components in terms of Implants, I think we made significant improvements in the implants. They're structural. We've made improvements in terms of design and press fit components, cementing techniques. We've made a lot of improvements in that. So I do see continued improvement, but not going to be that sort of pivoting component. Going to biologics, I think there's some improvements with that as well. But again, I don't think that we have the holy grail of regenerating articular margins and articular cartilage, but we're definitely trying to focus on PRP and stem cell research, which is there. Thing that's really going to be, besides the soft tissue preservation, which used to be there, is starting to pivot back now. A lot of the big 4 or 5 companies are focusing on subvascus, and I think Jiffy Knee has really made an impact over the last 5 to 7 years in getting that notation. Like, we need to go back and revisit this. So I think there's 2 components. First is going to be the soft tissue preservation. You're going to see more and more companies trying to emulate what Jiffy Knee is trying to do and revisit the soft tissue preservation. The second thing I think is going to be in robotics and AI. I truly believe that that is the future. In terms of robotics, I don't think that anytime soon that robots will be doing the entire surgery, including soft tissue dissection. I think it'll be a hybrid component because even though the procedure is same way every time, the soft tissue preservation, tensioning, and things like that are going to be very challenging. So I think robots will assist in making the cuts and also in calculating to help get the surgeons more efficient in terms of balancing and prediction of things before it happens. And as we collect more and more data on that. So some of the enabling technologies, the robots, the footprint of these robots will also get less too. And it'll be a lot more efficient in terms of mapping as well. So I think it'll be a hybrid between robots and AI technology along with the soft tissue preservation will be the 2 big things that will be the push in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, really exciting. Also seeing some changes, I guess, in rehab protocols. Again, I'm not in the field, but just kind of observing some sidelines here. But really interesting stuff. Definitely interested to see what the future holds, particularly when it comes to soft tissue preservation. So I think with that, we're going to wrap it up. Again, I've been talking to my friend Manish Patel, leading the shift in knee replacement surgery and soft tissue preservation. Thank you very much.
Sakib, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate the time as always. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.